Recently, I had the honor of sitting down with my friend, Brittany Braswell, on her podcast, Faith-Filled Food Freedom. And we had one of those conversations that I just had to share with you on the Her Best Self podcast. We dove deep into something that so many of you are wrestling with right now, and that is the restrict and binge cycle. That pattern of saving up calories, skipping meals, and then completely feeling like you're overdoing it later. And here's what we uncovered. This isn't willpower, sis. This is biology. This is about scarcity. This is about thinking that has been ingrained in you through years of diet culture messaging. And most importantly, this is something that you can absolutely break free from. With this conversation, Brittany and I get really practical. And we're not just talking about why this happens. I share with you actionable steps that you can implement to start dismantling the cycle for good. This episode is for you if you're tired of mental gymnastics around food, and if you're exhausted from calculating and planning and never feeling good enough, and you want to grant yourself permission. Sis, grab a snack and let's dive into this powerful conversation about breaking free from the cycle once and for all. Here we go.
So, Lindsey, I am really excited to get into this conversation with you today because I was telling you before we hit record, I think I have this conversation with a client or my group or somebody on almost at least a weekly basis, if not a couple times a week. I probably have so many listeners that are listening in and thinking like, okay, I have no idea why, but I just find myself starving hungry by the end of the day, or just mindlessly eating, binge eating, don't really know why. And then as we get to have conversation, they go, oh, well, I didn't really eat a whole lot today. Or I knew we were coming to eat. I was going out to eat with a friend. And so I was just kind of quote unquote saving up because I didn't want to overdo it early in the day so that I could really enjoy our meal out. And then instead of just enjoying the meal, they do end up overeating and they feel physically sick or frustrated or just aggravated with themselves. So why do you think that this kind of pattern, holding on, saving up calories, however you want to phrase it, and then ending up overeating or binge eating at the end of the day, why do you think this shows up for so many women?
Yeah, really great question. And I'm so happy to be here. I feel like we've been trying to plan this for a little while and it's finally happening. So it feels so great to be on your show and it's an honor. I feel that this pattern is rooted in scarcity thinking that's been deeply ingrained in all of us women through years of the diet culture messaging that we've been receiving. And it is tied to worthiness. And women have been taught over years that food is something that we have to either earn or it's something that needs to be rationed and we have to savor it and we have to control it rather than something that we deserve consistently, as in needed for energy. And I feel like when you are struggling with those messages day in and day out, your brain starts operating from that programming and says, well, less is more. I need to ration. I need to hold on. I need to delay. And then you get this kind of hit in the brain that says, well, if I delay, I'm going to be better. And then that is tied to that worthiness. I'm going to have this superiority kind of flare that happens. And what's happening is our bodies are legitimately starving and we need to have that consistent fuel. And that is where we get into the cycle of, the evening, either overeating in the evening or again, just going, I'm going to go to bed and not think about this. And so the restriction then clicks in. And it's a biological response of restriction. And it's not a lack of willpower. But I feel like we can sometimes think, oh, I should just push this off or why now? And it really is coming from a place of just not feeling worthy.
Man, we could turn that whole question or response into its own episode because that idea or that concern on either I'm not deserving enough or even the other kind of side of it on, I feel like I should just have more willpower. Why can't I stop myself from doing this? And I love that you just flat out mentioned there is a biological response that happens when you don't eat enough during the day. And I think there's probably some women listening who are going, oh, well, I thought I was eating enough during the day. I think I do eat enough. And maybe you haven't considered that as a factor on maybe you're overeating in the evening not because you don't have enough willpower, but because you haven't eaten enough during the day. So, Lindsey, I know you're very open. You've talked about your own recovery journey. Is this something that you have ever dealt with? And if so, or even as it pertains to working with a lot of your own clients, how have you seen this kind of experience show up, and how do you see it impacting either your own journey or maybe even the recovery journey for clients that you work with?
Yeah, I love this question. I mean, I lived this cycle for years. I lived it so long, I didn't know any other way to live, unfortunately. I would wake up and immediately go to my notebook. And I know this sounds awful and not to be triggering, but just to share vulnerably, like I would calculate and I would plan and I would go, okay, I need to save room for dinner later, or whatever social event I had that I was, on my calendar that I was trying to avoid. And I would be so strategic about what I was allowed permission to have. But it was a never-ending cycle. And what would happen was it would just become never good enough. So no matter the result, I always felt terrible either the night before going to bed or the next day. And I just stayed in this exhausting cycle, constantly punishing myself and having kind of highs and lows. And for me, it was, an anorexic diagnosis and the restrictive patterns and behaviors to where I would just find myself pushing it off as late as I could in the day to start my day, because then I would have enough before I went to bed. Mm-hmm. And it was awful. So my personal story was that I lived it for so many years. And I think that recovery didn't happen for me until I learned that energy wasn't a bad thing. And obviously I had to come to Jesus moment where God saved me from myself. And I talk about that very openly on the podcast and why I do what I do now. But it really meant that I had to surrender my desires and wants because I knew that God had a better life for me. And I feel like with the clients that I'm working with now, it's this reality of we've created these rules and they've served us for a period of our life. So it doesn't mean that we're bad or wrong for having these rules exist, but it's learning that those are just coping mechanisms from this feeling of like not feeling good enough or feeling unworthy or I have to control. And it's learning better ways to operate with those feelings and emotions. And so, I could go on and on about this question, but I really feel like that is it in a nutshell of living in that cycle for so long and just wanting out of it until it was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot do this anymore. And that's kind of where I found myself before, like my big rock bottom, you could say.
I think it's really helpful that you say that too, because I think so many women want to just think like, I'm going to wait till I hit rock bottom. Or maybe they think that it will never happen until you've pushed yourself enough that you start realizing like there is nowhere else to go from here, where like I don't think it's going to get worse, like how it's got to get better somehow. So you spoke a little bit into that idea of scarcity versus kind of the abundance and knowing like provision sort of mindset here. And we talked a little bit about hunger, and something you just mentioned, you talked about a couple of the factors that are sort of driving this desire to wait, or even sometimes it's not a desire, it's just almost this compulsion that, oh, I can't eat. I have to earn the right to eat, or I have to be deserving of it. Let's speak into this here for just a minute, because I was having a conversation with a client the beginning of this week at the time of this recording, and we were talking about that idea. This particular client hadn't even considered the fact that they had this mindset of, I don't deserve to eat. Another client even said, I know it's okay for me to eat. I know logically I'm supposed to eat and I need to, but I don't feel like I deserve satisfaction. Like I just need to eat to live. We hear that dynamic, that like back and forth of eat to live versus live to eat. And this particular client was definitely on the far end of, well, I just need to eat to live. I don't even deserve the enjoyment of a meal. And that part of that was driving this same kind of behavior on, well, I just won't eat all day and then I will at least deserve to have something at night. So I'd love for you to speak into that just a little bit on maybe why so many women struggle with that mentality.
It's definitely about permission, and the real drivers behind it are control, perfectionism. It's this deep belief that we have to earn, we have to prove, we have to be valuable. I grew up as a professional figure skater, and if you weren't first, you were last. If you weren't, if you were second place, you weren't good enough. And so early on, I learned that, okay, my physical body and just being an athlete and in that kind of, I guess, arena, no pun intended, was you had to be lean, you had to be on it, and you had to earn your food. I mean, that was a concept that was shared really early on for me. And many of my clients are using food restriction as this security blanket. And for me in that sport, it kind of was this, I had to prove, and it was an illusion to the world, and it was a false mask on me, right? That there's this like, if I'm suffering and punishing myself, I'm also feeling sort of like virtuous, and somehow like I'm proving I have discipline, or I'm better than you, almost the superiority complex. But underneath all of that, it's the core belief that you're not worthy of taking up space. And that's where that is where those feelings of like, I'm undeserving kind of comes from. But saving food becomes this way to just make yourself more controlled and literally make yourself smaller. And in terms of a place of not just physically, but allowing to take up space in the world. And so you start self-isolating, and it's so much more than, feeling hungry. It's really this desire to, I have to control all the things. And so what are some things I know I can do well to control? Oh, I can control my ability to eat or not eat. I can control what I'm allowed to have, i.e. carbs or not have, right? So that is kind of the underlying sense of it, and this illusion that, well, if I can do that, then I must be managing all these other things that I cannot control in my life.
Control is so huge. I feel like I've done multiple episodes on control. I just did one at the time that we were recording this. I released an episode this week on dealing with control. And so I feel like so much of what you just said is resonating with a ton of our listeners, in the sense of, regardless of what's going on in life, like we feel like we have to have control over these certain areas, and we have to earn this food. And there are so many fears, just like you just mentioned, that drive us into these behaviors. But I think so many of those fears, people don't realize, are really rooted in these misbeliefs or lies. We don't even realize that we're bought into this lie, or that we're bought into this belief that is not true. You mentioned, like, growing up, you were in this space, in this athletic space, where that was something that was talked about a lot, right? That, hey, you have to earn your meal, essentially. And so many people get caught in that cycle, regardless of whether you're an athlete or not. So if we have, let's say we've got a woman listening who's like, yes, okay, I get it. I need to move away from that belief. I'm realizing I'm struggling with that. Let's switch gears and get really practical here for a few minutes. I have heard you even on your own podcast, because I know you and I have these conversations on a regular basis, but you've talked about some different steps that can really help women start to just practically break away from this pattern of saving up their calories for the end of the day, or saving, like not eating and then struggling with binging or overeating in the evening. So can you walk us through, I know there are several, let's at least see if we can hit at least 3 or 4, some practical behaviors, patterns, whatever it is that somebody could go, okay, here's at least one. Let me choose at least one I could implement today to see if I can start shifting this pattern a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the first core ones, and I know this is one that we want to skip because we feel like it's just kind of fluff, but it is combating that lie of you are deserving of good things now, not later, now. And this is getting real about who you actually are versus what the lies have been labeling you as. You were created by God, first and foremost, made in his image, and you are so worthy of love, and you are worthy of nourishment, period. Like that is it. There's no arguing. There's no bargaining in our minds about that. And when your worth is tied to that and that alone, then why would you withhold nourishment or energy or fuel for you to go out and rock life? And so the first step is really going, what am I believing is false? And what do I know is true when I'm feeling I don't deserve it? Okay, well, feelings aren't facts. Next, something that I really find is really practical is setting a new rule. And for a lot of my clients, it just looks like mechanically deciding and eating, okay? Because I tend to get a lot of the, well, what if I'm not hungry? Well, you're not going to be when you first start this. Like you probably aren't going to be if you've been waiting until the evening or waiting until later in the day or pushing it past lunchtime. Like you're probably not going to be. And so this means just creating a boundary for yourself. I call them non-negotiables, where these cues have been broken. You're not going to be hungry. We know that. So we're going to put that on the shelf. But my non-negotiable is that doesn't matter. I'm going to have something to fuel my body an hour earlier. Or tomorrow when I wake up, I'm going to make a commitment to myself to eat 2 meals and 3 snacks, 3 meals and 2 snacks. Like whatever is from where your current baseline is now, right? Going up one notch there. Doing a goal that's going to give you something there. And so a lot of times that is looking like, instead of waiting for later, I am going to make a commitment to myself to eat 2 hours earlier. That in itself, you got to give your brain a little win. Okay. So that's like a practical. Another thing that is super, I call it like easily digestible, which is funny, but is the opposite action. Okay. We've got Regina George that lives wanting to tell us all these rules in our minds that we've been believing forever. We're going to just do the opposite of what she's telling us. So when that voice in your mind saying you need to wait until later, or, oh, you're about to go out to dinner in 2 hours, you shouldn't have anything now, the immediate opposite response is what you do. So this rewires your brain to understand that you're not taking orders from her anymore. And
that's good.
You were taking orders from you. You're driving the bus. So it's, okay, you shouldn't eat for another 2 hours. No, I'm going to have something right now. It's just the opposite action in the moment, because I fully believe that, yes, that is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable even to create like a new rule and a non-negotiable, but comfort isn't the goal. Freedom's the goal, right? So if
say it again for the ones in the back.
Comfort isn't the goal. Freedom is the goal. So if I want to be free from being chained to this, then I have to do something. Nike says it best, like, just do it. Just do it. We're just going to do it. And so it's picking one action that is going to get you to where you ultimately want to be, which is freedom.
Okay. I want to park here for a second because I'm over here. Y'all can't see me. I wish y'all could see me like throwing my hands in the air and doing all the things, because you're preaching to somebody right now, because I know there's somebody listening who's going, okay, I just needed somebody to give me permission to just do the thing, like to just break the rule. I was telling somebody recently, I was like the quintessential good girl in high school. Like I was very respectful to my parents. I was mostly conscientious of curfews and all the things. And until I got to college, and then I had my little like, oh, hey, look, I'm on my own. Let me make some dumb choices. And when it came to rules, I did not break the rules. Like when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, and I have learned as an adult that breaking rules is okay. And you just need to know which ones it takes a little wisdom and a little trial and error to recognize which rules are actually beneficial and which ones do we really need to challenge and just break them. So somebody needed to hear that today, that you just got to break the rule, do the opposite action, figure out. So maybe for you that's listening, maybe you need to just take a minute and brain dump and go, what rules am I following? What are the rules? I always call it, you used Regina George, which I love. I always call it just like, you got a really bad roommate and you're letting them live in your head rent free. Like if you were actually, if the person in your head that's telling you all these things lived with you, you'd kick them out in a heartbeat. There's no way you would tolerate somebody being bossy britches to you all the time. So, but we let it happen. So maybe you just need a brain dump and go, okay, what are the rules that they keep telling me? This voice, this whatever it is, the enemy keeps lying to me saying you need to do this, and pick one to break. So I love that. And the practical of hey, if I have a rule that I don't eat until X whatever o'clock at night, then I can eat. This is probably a different conversation, but even with things like intermittent fasting that turn into big food rules on, well, I can't eat during this time period. Maybe that you mentioned, like, give yourself, just say, I'm going to eat 1 hour earlier, or I'm going to eat 2 hours earlier, and I'm going to break that rule. And when you do that, Lindsey, you tell me this, if this has been true for you and with your clients. What I tell my clients is, like, give yourself the opportunity to see that the world is not going to fall apart when you break that rule.
100%.
Right? If I'm telling myself can't eat till 7 p.m., what is really going to be that different if I eat at 5 o'clock? From that mental standpoint, am I going to be so stressed that this horrible thing's going to happen if I eat at 5 o'clock? And I know, guys, when y'all are listening, I know I'm making this sound extra dramatic, but we do this in our heads. We build this up like, I can't, like, this is sacred. I can't break this rule. So I love that. I've harped on this enough. Let's go over maybe like one or two others. What are one or two other practical steps or challenges that someone could implement if they are working towards eating and nourishing their body earlier in the day instead of waiting until the evening?
Yeah. I mean, another one that I did in recovery from my eating disorder was I would eat like half of something larger and I would have it earlier as a way to break this. Again, is another way of kind of looking at, okay, let me ease into this. Maybe it feels very heavy for me to just start eating a 3-course breakfast in the morning because I haven't for a year. What can I have? Can I have a couple eggs? Can I have a slice of toast? Like, let's start that. That's the thing. Then I'm going all in on that thing. And I'm just making that a consistent. Though change happens with consistent small steps. It doesn't happen with like throwing everything, on the kitchen counter and going, I'm just going to start doing this. It happens with small, consistent steps. And honestly, that's how it unravels, is small, consistent steps of doing something that we once thought was very healthy that no longer is. Another thing, and I know this is going to sound kind of interesting how I do this, but I know you probably do this too with your clients, but I tell them to go like, is that really logical? If we're arguing about a time, isn't it that time already somewhere else in the world? Like, let's get really logical. Like,
that's good.
Like, if we're saying we don't eat until, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or I can't have lunch yet because it's 10:30 or whatever it is, isn't it noon somewhere? Isn't it dinner time?
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
So, like, why are we waiting to do the thing that our body wants now? Like, and so that is, and even with other tasks in life, like, let's do the hard thing first, because then we get it out of the way. So, a couple of these steps, it's like, let's look at our to-do list. Let's do the hard thing first. If eating earlier is the hardest thing that I'm going through right now, then I need to do that first. Okay, let's get tangible. What am I eating earlier? Because it's nice to go, oh, I'm going to do this, but we're still making it optional when we do that. And so that means we haven't really granted full permission. And that's what you hit on. It's like, yes, sis, you have 100% permission right now to go do the thing. Now, what is that thing going to be? And these are the kind of conversations, right, that you're having with a client. But it's not just, oh, I'm going to eat an hour earlier. Great. Now we've accomplished that we're going to eat it. Now, what is that thing going to be? That makes it clear and it makes it more doable.
I love that you mentioned that practical. And for some of you listening, this may sound like, okay, I know this, but I need you to listen. Like, listen to what Lindsey is saying. We've got to get nitty gritty and practical, because if you already have a plan in your head, or you have this consistent pattern, right? Lindsey, you talked about how patterns are built with consistent practice or consistently doing something, and they're undone the same way. That if you have built this habit of, hey, I don't eat until later because, and then I get stressed throughout the day thinking, what am I going to have? What am I supposed to have? Or whatever it might be. If you do the thing early, that hard thing early, number one, it does kind of help knock it out of the way, but what's going to help you follow through with that? This, something that I hear so often, and you probably hear this too, is, well, Brittany, I know what to do. Or Lindsey, I know what to do, but I just can't seem to do it. Like, I don't know why I can't seem to do it. And I think so much of it is what you just mentioned, is we don't have a concrete plan in place to help hold us accountable, right? I'm going to eat 1 hour earlier. Okay, we'll start off. What time do you normally eat? Write it down. And then back it up an hour and write it down. I forget the statistic, but it's something like you're 50% more likely or twice as likely, whatever, to do something when you write it down. And then it increases even more when you tell somebody. So if you go, okay, well, normally I eat dinner at 7, or that's the first time of the day, or whatever it is. Okay, well, I'm going to eat at 6, and here's what I'm going to have. I'm not going to eat less just because I'm eating earlier. Here's what I'm committed to having. And then maybe you add an accountability means onto that by telling somebody else or using one of the strategies we've already talked about, right? Like knowing, okay, if this is going to be consistent, maybe I go in my phone or on my computer and I put in a calendar appointment so that I'll see it and get that reminder or whatever it is. So
yeah,
I love that you mentioned not just, hey, do this, but make a plan for it. I think that can be so helpful. So I want to switch gears a little bit you guys, I will make sure I'm going to link Lindsey's podcast up in the show notes. And Lindsey, I would love at the end here for you to tell people where they can find you and hear more from you, because I know you go over some more steps on your podcast, but something that we talked about at the beginning of the episode was worthiness. And so often it's easy for us to tie our identity or our worth or our value to our bodies or to the way we eat. So how, for the person who is struggling with their identity, especially in their relationship with the Lord, how does embracing our identity in Christ, as opposed to our bodies, change the way that we approach things like eating earlier in the day or being kinder to our bodies, even when it comes to those seemingly strange behaviors? We might not go, what does my identity in Christ have to do with saving up calories for later? What would you tell that woman?
I would tell her, when you truly get that you are fearfully and wonderfully made and you are a daughter of the Most High, it changes how you treat your vessel. I tell my kids every day before they leave to go to school, like, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, like you are, by the God of the universe. Like, he made you the way you are. And we also say, and I can do all things through who? And my 7-year-old goes, through Christ who gives me strength. I'm like, yes. And so that means we need to stop seeing food as the enemy, and we need to start seeing it as God's provision that he gave to us for fuel. Your body becomes this temple of honor. And I feel like it's, for me, for a really long time, it was a project to keep perfect. It was a project. It was something I had to constantly manage, and I had to save calories because I had to manage the project. I had to keep it all together. But God's grace is built from abundance. And that doesn't mean we're going to blow up and gain 500 pounds. It just is, what it means is that your identity is something that is larger than the vessel that you came here with. And so we have to start asking different questions. So those questions, instead of them being, how little can I eat? How do I want to operate in this life? Like, what kind of legacy do I want to leave behind for my family and kids? Do I always want to be tired and frustrated and moody and angry because I don't eat carbohydrates? Or do I want to steward them? And so it's larger than us, right? It's seeing our identity a little bit differently than just how we look. That would be probably the primary approach, is like, you were bought with a price. You're a masterpiece. And honestly, just as you mentioned, writing down all these food rules, I think it's super fun to go in and write down what God says about you and put that somewhere. Like, I have hanging on my wall. I know people can't see it that aren't listening or that aren't watching, but you're his masterpiece. When I'm feeling inadequate, come up against that, right? Put those things around you so that you are constantly reminded, because the world's going to tell you differently.
That's so good. And something that I even want to tack onto that, because I love that. Something that my clients have heard me say dozens of times at this point is, if you believe, and as a podcast listener, I'm sure you've heard me say this too, that if you believe that even part of scripture is true, then you inherently have to believe the whole thing is true, that you're not the exception. The Lord tells us in Psalm 139, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. It doesn't say everyone but Lindsey is fearfully and wonderfully made, or everyone but Brittany is fearfully and wonderfully made. So being able to have those reminders can be so helpful when you have truth to fall back on, because even because the world, you mentioned like the world is going to tell us otherwise, and we're going to tell ourselves otherwise unless we know that there's scripture that speaks truth, that helps us recognize, okay, what I'm believing or what I'm telling myself right now is not true. So I love that when you said like truly knowing your identity in Christ changes how you treat your vessel. And I think that's such an important takeaway for us to remember. So Lindsey, as we get ready to wrap up this conversation, if one of our podcast listeners was just going to like, if we were going to all three sit down and have coffee together, and you're sitting across from her and she's like, this is a struggle for me right now. I feel like I still need to kind of save up. I need to eat later, but I do want to break that cycle. What is maybe one final step or piece of encouragement that you would give that woman? What's the next thing that you would encourage her to do or believe after this podcast episode wraps up?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of ties back to doing the opposite action a little bit, but are you making a decision around food out of fear, or any decision out of fear or out of love? If it's out of fear, like I can't eat this because I'm going to gain weight, then I want you to pluck that thought, because for one, that's not true, but we have to decipher where this stuff is coming from. I say it all the time, like we got to get to the root and not just pull the weeds. But first, we have to go, okay, my body deserves consistent fuel. What I tell my daughter, what I tell my best friend, what I tell you over coffee, that you can't have that coffee because there's cream in it, or that you're not allowed a croissant yet, you would never say that to me, right? And I would never say that to you. So I think this one action is going to begin to break this pathway in our minds that are keeping you from like, I have to save later, or I have to save for later, and I have to suffer now. It's not about creating like a perfect meal plan or about saving calories for later. It's about just believing in yourself. Is what I'm doing coming from a place of love, or is it coming from a place of fear? And if it's coming from a place of fear, what do I want to do next? Because fear is not, we know fear is from the enemy, right? And so it's constantly choosing to honor yourself, even when everything else around you is telling you you shouldn't, or you're not allowed, or your own brain. It's doing the action anyways. So that kind of goes into a little bit of the number one step I would say is put all of that aside, talk back, be like, no, sit down, shut up. I'm not saving my calories until lunchtime. I'm going to do it now. Because this is what keeps us from that place of scarcity into a place of abundance.
That's so good. I love that you even mentioned just like say it out loud. I think so often we get caught up in our heads and we try to have this like mental battle of, no, let me argue back. And then I'm listening to what you say. Oh, maybe I'm falling into what you're saying is true. Say it out loud. When you speak out loud, this has been my experience anyway. I'm not going to say this is from scientific evidence, but for me at least, when I say something out loud, not only am I speaking it, but I'm hearing it too, right? Like I get both of those senses going, and I am physically invested in this versus just trying to have an argument inside my head. And I think that can be so helpful with anything, but being able to speak out loud when you hear this lie coming to you, maybe it's a lie that doesn't feel like a lie right now. Maybe it just feels like, well, yeah, I really shouldn't eat yet, or I don't deserve to eat until later. So I love that. Say it out loud and ask yourself that question. Are you making your decision out of fear or out of love? So I love that. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Lindsey. I think this has been such a helpful and encouraging and practical conversation for our faith-filled food freedom listeners. For those who loved it and would love to get a little bit more of you and your insight, tell us a little bit about what you do and how women can follow along with you.
Yeah, of course. So I am an eating disorder recovery coach, and I help women really break the chains for good to find everlasting freedom from those food thoughts and the bad body image. And you can find more at herbestself.co. So that is my website. Everything's out there. But my favorite place to be is on the podcast. I just love podcasting in general, which is, I love your podcast too, Brittany. It's so much fun. And I think our industry, we need more podcasters. So I would encourage you, if you're looking for something to listen to and you love Brittany's show, my show is Her Best Self. And you can find it on everywhere that you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, etc.
Awesome. Well, we are going to link those up in the show notes. You guys go hang out with Lindsey, follow along with her as well for some extra encouragement and practical strategies when it comes to food freedom, body image, eating disorder recovery, all the things. So thank you again, Lindsey, for being here. And thank you guys for listening in. That is a wrap for today, friends. So be sure to join us back next time. And until then, keep chasing joy and choosing freedom.
Hey sis, thank you for listening to this different episode today that I wanted to share with you. I hope you got something out of it that is going to help propel you as you navigate forward. Before you go, I just wanted to invite you in. If you are looking for support and you are just tired of being tired and you are like, Lindsey, I've listened to your podcast. How do I find you? How do we work together? What do you do? Like, how can you help me? Sis, I see you, I feel you on all the levels, and I'm so here for you too. If you're looking for that one-on-one personalized support, you can find my coaching services out on my website, herbestself.co. Fill out a client application there, friend. You'll also see that link in the show notes of the show, and I will meet you right there, and we will chat, have a totally informal convo, and we'll talk about all that we can accomplish together. Also, if you are looking for group support, this is the time to join the Recovery Collective. If you're listening to this after October of 2025, just make sure to check out the Recovery Collective links that you can join us there. But if you are looking for a group support, now is the time. I have a very limited offer that I'm running October of 2025. We are starting October the 15th, and you want to get in this room. It is $47 a month. That is it. And it's just a token of my love to you because I want to be able to help you. And I also want you to invest in your recovery because I feel like when you do that, you show up for yourself. So I created this very low ticket opportunity for us to partner together. You want to come in there. You want to get help and support from people that have been there, done that, and also from ladies who are going through similar things as you. So if you'd like a very intimate circle of women that can be trusted, these are either prior clients of mine, women just like you who have signed up for the collective. We want to get started with our founding member group. So come on out to herbestself.co/recovery collective. And until then, friend, I'll see you on Tuesday with another episode. Bye for now. Oh, friend, thank you so much for letting me share what was on my heart today. My hope for this podcast is to help more women find freedom from food and body. If this has empowered or blessed you, let me know. I'd be honored for your rating and review of my show, and I'd love to connect with you in my private Facebook community. You really can move from perfection to purpose. Let's break the chains together. I'll help navigate the way. Until next time, bye for now, girl.